All right, thank you and good afternoon. Thanks for attending everybody to what is our final wrap-up webinar on our solutions and strategies series that we have been going over for the last, oh boy, 2 months now it's been really. And today we're going to kind of tie it all together. So thank you for attending. A couple housekeeping rules here before we get going. There is a Q&A function for questions, so please use that, not the chat function, as that will be easier for us to see on our end, so we can make sure we answer questions that make sense, and those that don't get answered we can send out when we're done. So please try to do that. If not, we do have some questions that came in beforehand too, so we will get to those. And the webinar will be recorded, and if you've been on our previous webinars in this series, they will also be available on our website and the YouTube channel for Beryllium. You'll also get an email tomorrow that will have the link to this webinar and the previous ones. So be on the lookout for that. So as we get going today, we have Brian Emerson of Point North Networks, one of our core collaborators and strategic partners of the QuickTrack solution and program, and we will introduce him here in a minute. So today's diving deeper into QuickTrack is specific to tying everything back together from our previous webinars, as I mentioned. So where it all began, going back to April, was our joint webinar with the Defense Alliance, and having some folks from all different sides of the CMMC present an update. And of course, a lot has changed since April, and now we're in the middle of July, and just great resources from the CMMC AB website. So please continue to check that out. Also, as you know, the versions of CMMC are available on the website as well. So make sure you continue to stay close to that, is where factual information is going to come from. And then what we did after that is we had a solutions panel. So we had panelists from what we call our core collaborators of the QuickTrack solution. And we took, just a great audience. It was, the questions were really good on all different sides of the compliance needs that we're looking for. And it was awesome. And if you wanted to recap on those, for those, this is your first webinar, all of those webinars are available. When we took specific dives into each panelist solving the problems within NIST 800-171 are available on the Beryllium website on our webinars tab. So please encourage you to join those and look at those and see how we have progressed our way to where we are today. What we were covering in all of those previous webinars are the domains of CMMC and where things are now versus where they used to be, and around specifically CMMC Level 3. We're very much into the weeds on NIST 800-171 and the additional practices available, really focusing on getting the gaps filled for NIST 800-171 and taking things past the analysis phase and getting them into place so that bad guys are out of our stuff. That's essentially what it comes down to at the end of the day, is data and information security, and we have to be more mature on that. So if you have questions about what the CMMC is, what NIST 800-171 is, you'll see my contact information at the end. We can have that conversation, but for today's webinar, we are going to be diving deeper into getting a solution in place for those needing to fill out their gaps. So what we did with the first webinar is we talked to Joe Stuntz over at Virtru and really did a deep dive on what Virtru represents to the domains of CMMC and the ones that they solve, talking about encryption and sending CUI to anybody inside or outside your organization, and making sure that it's protected and within the requirements of being a DoD contractor. So some features around some customizability on how you can do that, some personalization of their tool, the secure reader that you can access along with the person that you're communicating with, so that the conversation and stuff is all tracked and monitored and it's secure and encrypted at all times, along with documentation that you can watermark to have people view only, et cetera, et cetera. So please check out that webinar if you haven't already. Next webinar was with Patrick over at Nectar Labs. We got really granular on the event management and monitoring and logging and alerting requirements of CMMC and NIST 171. Again, very important subject within these domains, and Nectar Labs does a great job. They are involved with our QuickTrack solution for many reasons, but you can see there's a lot of things to cover there. Whether it's failed login attempt reports or anything else along your users, it's really good information to have, which again we'll get into in a little bit more in a few minutes. And then Duo, the Duo Fed team, we had Brian and Ezra on. Again, very technical dive into the authentication world, which is, as you know, in 2020 and moving forward, very important. Duo can get between just about any application in person, so it's just a great, easy resource. And it's as simple as, is this you or is it not you when it comes to what we're talking about today? But if we're not doing that at a minimum, I mean, that's a process and maturity level that needs to be hit quick, because it's a great way to keep bad actors out of our systems. So to recap and kind of transition into what we're going to talk about with Brian today is, what is everything that we're talking about? How is all of the previous webinars and these different vendors and solutions and subject matter experts coming together to solve the problem for small business defense contractors? So the mindset that we're going to get into today is this, is imagining a system, server, secure, encrypted, and all the requirements within NIST 171 and now into CMMC into one place, into one system that is for CUI. So it's not a solution that was constructed or designed to do payment card industry work or HIPAA in the healthcare world. It's built for CUI for defense contractors, specifically small businesses. So how does that work? Well, the Virtru features that you can look on those previous webinars that we're not going to cover today. Nectar Labs, same with what their pieces of the pie that they solve, and Duo and multi-factor, they're all in there. They're all in the system. They were all put there by the Beryllium and Point North teams because we felt those are the best vendors that small businesses should be utilizing from a practicality standpoint, a cost perspective standpoint, but a managed standpoint. I mean, these are really good tools for a small business. Well, it's a lot of work to put not just these three vendors in, but all of the other requirements that go behind the 110 plus controls now of what a level 3 is going to represent. And that's where Point North Networks comes into play. So how do they do that? So I'm gonna introduce Brian here in a second, but that's exactly what they're doing. Think of them as the MSP of all the technical controls of a secure virtual environment accessed through a remote desktop, which is QuickTrack. And that's what they do. They're doing that for you, the small business, and so you don't have to. So Brian Emerson is the president and owner of Point North Networks. Thanks for joining, Brian. Could you just talk, topically a little bit and get into, from your standpoint, that role that you're playing for QuickTrack clients and customers on how keeping their CUI confidentiality and availability and all that together at one time is important, and how you're doing that?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Derek, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Emerson from Point North Networks. Our role in Point North Networks, we're a managed service provider since about 2005 here in the Minneapolis area. We do everything from managing small networks for our customers all the way up to data center management for our various data centers around the country and here in Minneapolis. Interesting thing is that we met Beryllium here in the Minneapolis area, which is a really nice partnership. And they came to us and said, we have a very specific problem. We are doing assessments for contractors that need to meet NIST 800-171 compliance. What we're finding is that it's a very expensive, very time-consuming, And to build this on your own, and these contractors aren't being able to fulfill this. Point North, you guys are here local. We know what your guys' history is. Can you build us a secure environment meeting these 110 controls? Which was, sure, we can do that, but let me tell you, it took us 2 years to kind of build out this environment, and that's from having a technical background spanning a decade or so of experience. So for anyone to try to do this on their own, focusing on their manufacturing processes or whatever else it might be, even without a technical background, that's a very big task to tackle. And that's kind of where we came together from Point North and the Beryllium side to create the QuickTrack environment. The solutions that we have in here, specifically from Virtru, Nectar Labs, and Duo, they weren't just picked out. These were vendors that had a very good solution that really fit with the spirit of 171 and what we're trying to do with this. So again, we took a long time to vet these partners out, and they've been great partners. And not only that, but everything that else goes into that works seamlessly to help you meet 800-171 compliance. So we've built this, we've used these tools. When you look at the QuickTrack environment, it's very native to what a normal user would see. But as Derek said, the 110 controls behind it is where the real magic comes into place, specifically with encryption with Virtru, Nectar Labs, SIEM, MFA from Duo. It's a great solution. Each one of these on their own is a great solution individually, but it doesn't fit the full package, which is what the QuickTrack environment is, and that's what we're providing together with our partners in Beryllium.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Brian. That's well said. And to kind of elaborate a little bit more on this. So QuickTrack itself, and we will show what it looks like and show some use case examples and features of it. This goes back to, again, situational circumstances for small business contractors. This is not an enterprise solution. This is not a hundreds of people touching CUI solution. Typically businesses of that size and that scope and that CUI programs are pretty heavy, have some resources to either build on current infrastructure and improve that, or get in some more complicated and robust ways of housing and sending and communicating with CUI. So again, small business focus, and I think, Brian, one of the things that you hit on that is very much part of our core and what makes us in this, not just Beryllium, but you as well and our partners, is that, we don't just sell and put together a solution like this using somebody's suite of services, not Cisco, not Microsoft, not Amazon. That's a reseller agreement. Those are out there and they can work, but they tend to be clunky. And then who's really checking for the best possible outcome with the small business in mind? And that's why, to your point, Brian, we thought, let's go find what is best. If I were a small business and I had all of, which we are, but if we were a defense contractor and we had all the resources, all the manpower, all the experience, Brian, that you're talking about, could we build something like this in our facility? Absolutely. It just takes a lot of time, resources, upkeep, management, and so on. And when we talk about CMMC, now we're talking about that maturity and that managed good security program that they're asking those that handle CUI to have. That's a full-time job for usually more than one person. So we have a way of doing that. And to kind of focus a little bit further, as you see the other core collaborators here come, that's where Beryllium and Innopro IQ, who does security awareness training, come into play. And that red line there that you see represents that separation of function of IT and security. We have to get away from, and this is difficult to do from a small business, so we understand that, but what the CMMC and the DoD is asking for you to do is separate that function. Because if you have a bunch of IT folks who are very, very talented and can build up stuff and manage systems and then say, yeah, we're good because we know we do it, is that an effective way of verifying that? Well, the CMMC is going to verify that, but you should have security looking at things from a security standpoint and IT looking at things from the technical aspects, working together, but also the business. The business itself has requirements that go above and beyond just having a list of things that you have. So that's a really key focus, and we want that to make sure that we're we'll focus on that as we talk through further. So before we get into an actual demo of QuickTrack, how does it work? This is the question that we get a lot of times. So that device you see on the right, imagine that as being your device, whether it's yours personally or yours through your organization. You are establishing a secure VPN into the system. And Brian, if you want to talk about that a little bit, I'll move this forward as you talk about the importance of getting into that secure system of the QuickTrack enclave and server and back to this device with multi-factor authentication in place to authenticate it and have it come right up on the device, and why that is an avenue that a lot of small businesses should be looking at in order to keep CUI off the regular network.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, we wanted to make this as user-friendly, least intrusive as possible to the end user, and more importantly to the business processes, whatever those might be. However, one of the controls for NIST 171 is having a secure external connection, meaning a VPN. So the very first step into getting into the system, the CUI handling system, is to establish a VPN connection, and that's an absolute requirement. So with the VPN connection, and this is where our partner Duo comes in, this is how we can set two-factor access control and establish that secure encrypted tunnel into your CUI environment. So this is where the VPN comes in, and again, we've tried to make this as seamless and easy as possible, not only with the VPN, but also with a small CUI NIST 800-171 portal control panel, if you may, that we can distribute latest news regarding anything related to news for the DoD or for 171 latest news. So it's kind of a neat little feature. So Derek, I'm not sure if you want to move through the slide there. Once we set the VPN.
Yeah, so in thinking in this mindset too, and we have definitely beat this drum a lot over the last couple webinars, but from a small business perspective, and paraphrasing a little bit here, the paralysis feeling of I don't know what to do, I don't have much in place, and where do I go, can be very daunting from searching for solutions and searching for what to do. And what good is taking a test if you know you're going to fail it, is kind of the approach. If you know you don't have stuff in place, you should be looking for an affordable, practical, and secure solution. There's no question. And this is what we're going to showcase that. And now with COVID, which, going back to even that April event, that was right when COVID started, those situations have changed for a lot of organizations. So what we did with this video here is the first portion of this video is basically to show how easily and accessible QuickTrack is, and this is from my couch. So anybody working from home or working somewhere within a facility, they don't have to be hardwired into anything. And this is exactly what it looks like. And Brian, you're welcome to talk through. I'll pause this at certain points, but yeah, you can talk through a little bit this if you'd like.
Yep, sure. So this is the control panel to get into the QuickTrack system. As we see, we're launching our QuickTrack environment. You can see from Derek's phone there that our partner Duo has authenticated us into the system using two-factor authentication. That two-factor went back to our system and essentially let Derek into the QuickTrack system, and it looks surprisingly familiar, just like a Windows 10 desktop environment. And that was really the goal behind QuickTrack, is make the most familiar interface that we possibly could for the end user. When you look at this, you're looking at a Windows 10 desktop, but really where the magic comes in is all the 110 controls behind the scenes, which includes encrypted storage. It includes dedicated secure VLAN switching, maintained firewall, multi-factor authentication, log aggregation, monitoring and alerting from SEAM, our partners from Nectar, endpoint protection, antivirus, data loss prevention, backups, vulnerability scans. Everything that goes into having a secure environment is basically everything you see here. And again, that's behind the scenes that we're constantly managing and monitoring. But from an end user perspective, it's essentially a Windows 10 desktop secured with a VPN two-factor authentication. What Derek's looking at right now is what we call our M drive, and our M drive meets the control for dedicated encryption at rest. Whoop, kind of lost that there, Derek.
Yep, sorry about that.
Some neat things about the M drive is that it's a standard file share with the encryption behind it, but some really neat features for sharing and collaboration, almost like a SharePoint or a OneDrive type solution, but very purposely built. It's not a cloud solution. It's in our data center in this environment, but has the same neat features for sharing, versioning, and everything else you would get from an enterprise solution, but custom built in our data center specifically to meet these requirements and ease of use, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so some of the features that you're seeing here, what we're really highlighting is some of the ways that you can share. And this is a cool one here, Brian. You want to talk about the web portal?
Yeah, the web portal is essentially an extension of what you see on the M drive as a native drivelet or a drive mapping. It allows access to get into the system through a secure manner that allows you to upload and share files without actually having to be in QuickTrack, yet secured in a way that meets NIST 800-171 compliance needs. So this is a web version of getting into the encrypted M drive from inside the QuickTrack system.
Yeah, very popular with multi-files and not just going back and forth with an email solution, for example, which we'll get to in a second here. And I keep losing my mouse, so I want to make sure. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's again. So we'll move forward here a little bit, and we'll kind of get into this again, just showing that you see the same thing once you go through the web portal, and you can send files that way. So now we'll get into the email function a little bit. And one thing that's important here, Brian, and you're welcome to elaborate on this, is you're in a separate system here. So you're in a secure system. We get a lot of questions about, I just want to do my work and have CUI come into my organization in my regular email and then magically end up fully secure, fully protected, and only accessible by those that I assign to it. Well, that's a very wishful thinking approach. And even in the military, for example, if you have a job in the military and you have 7 different systems that you need to log into, you have separate ways of doing that for each system. Different authentication, different login, different systems. And that's really the mentality that we are very mission focused on. Is your CUI is your CUI. This is important stuff. This is national security measures. This is information that other countries want. And we shouldn't be paying the money that we invest in finding innovation and research on this just to give it away. So within a QuickTrack type solution, it stays protected. It's where it needs to be, and you, the customer, and we go through scoping exercises to make sure that only the people that need access to it get it, right? And that's what they're asking you to do within NIST 800-171, is segmenting that data off so that you can't say, I didn't know where it was, or I wasn't sure if Susie and Johnny needed it, etc. So when it comes to email, you have an encrypted email that every single time you are in QuickTrack, logged in and communicating via email, your messages and your documents are then encrypted going out. And that goes to people internally that don't have access to QuickTrack and externally to your customers. And same thing, you change your policy and procedure to your customers and those that you communicate with to say, if you're sending CUI, please send it to this email address, which will then put it into QuickTrack. Okay, and that's a big deal, because that is you telling them how you are following the compliance model and the letter of the law on how to handle this information. This is why Virtru is such a great tool and is absolutely something that makes your day-to-day life simple when it comes to sending CUI. So I'm going to let this play, Brian. You can talk through a couple of these things. I'll pause it again. But just know that even though it says off up here in the left-hand corner, Virtru is on. The on switch here gives you more personalization on what you can do around some of those grayed out areas, and you'll see that in a second. So same thing, you're in a Microsoft environment, you attach your file, you send it to whoever, this is not a real email address, and you say, okay, I'm sending the CUI, I'm done with it. You know what? I'm going to set some parameters. Brian, you want to talk about some of those a little bit?
Yeah, so first of all, as you might have guessed, what you're looking at is you're looking at
Oh,
Outlook from Office. So we fully load the environment with Microsoft Office, and it's native Outlook. So just like you would use Outlook anywhere else, it's Outlook in the environment. The difference is that we've pre-configured this for you, so when you're sending an email, there's nothing different that you have to do. You compose your email, you attach your files, you send it to who you're going to send it to, and you hit the send button. There's nothing you need to do other than hit the send button, and that email is going to be encrypted to your recipient. Again, this is, as we talked, as we developed this wasn't our first email encryption solution. We went through some others in different versioning. But again, Virtru was the partner that really kind of fit the bill and put it all together for us. And you can see as Derek's kind of highlighting for us, it's not just the encryption, but all the other security features that go under their solution. And again, it's strictly Outlook with the Virtru security feature wrapped around it. So outside of just encrypting your email, you can see what Derek has there is as we're sending email, we have the option to set expirations on how long this email lives. So in other words, if we say we want this to expire at the end of the day, the email content will literally disappear. We can set options where we don't want this sensitive information forwarded, so we're going to disable forwarding, which completely eliminates the need or the option for anyone to forward that sensitive information other than the recipient themselves. And probably one of my favorites is the watermarking, where we can watermark the background of this email. So anytime it's sent or viewed, we can see that it's very sensitive information. So those are some of the neat basic
yeah,
features of Virtru.
yeah.
Yep.
Let
But
me,
again, it's yeah. Go ahead, Derek.
I just want to jump in real quick on the watermarking thing, because that's a very popular topic and a very important one. And we hear this feedback all the time from our QuickTrack clients, but the watermarking is really important from the example of, okay, we have 5 QuickTrack users that need access to this system for CUI, but we have people within our organization that just need to view it. So a view only person, they never have to download it, they never have to print it off, they just need to see what they need to do for their portion of the work to fulfill the contract, then they go do it. And the 2 features on here that I really like about that is watermarking and setting expiration. And so within the Virtru, and we get into this on the previous webinar, so you can learn more about this, but the policy and procedure within your business, within QuickTrack, is going to say, you shall not take pictures with your phone of CUI, you will not screen grab, you will not do anything unless you have access to the QuickTrack environment, right? So if a watermark has the receiver's email all over it, which is what happens, then that person can look at it and do their work. If they do go above and beyond policy and break the rules, then now you have proof of that. I mean, that's a pretty easy way to cover your own backside on this stuff and communicate and educate with your internal people that are working within these projects on what is allowed and what is not allowed, right? And it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It's just, no, your name is all over this because this is for you to view. Now, the setting expiration is cool, because if you set it to expire in, say, a day, because Johnny just needs to see it for a couple minutes, do his work, and then in 6 months, maybe, or 6 days or whatever, comes back and says, I'd really like to see that document again. The sender, let's say it's Brian in this case, can unexpire that. I don't know if that's a word, but can take the expiration back off of that. And that's all logged and audited, right? So that is then put in place so you can see it again. So you don't have to resend it and refind it or anything like that. So 2 very cool features. It helps with scope. It helps with control. This is controlled unclassified information. Let's not forget that first word there. It's a great resource and again, it starts with having the secure system to be able to do these kind of functions. Very difficult to do this kind of stuff if you're kind of piecemealing it together or kind of flying by the seat of your pants on, I think this person needs it, I'm going to give Virtru to all these people. And that's where it starts to get very difficult to defend yourself against an audit. So we're trying to take that heavy lifting off and put it back on the Point North and Beryllium team within the QuickTrack solution. All right, so I'm gonna just move this forward a little bit further. Brian, you're welcome to keep talking. I apologize for this jumping back into additional slides. I don't like doing live demos for all sorts of different reasons. So we made the video so that it was easier, but clicking around is a little bit difficult. So one thing that I want to show is as it encrypts, as Brian mentioned, you don't have to do anything else. You guys saw the little teaser on the secure reader. It comes back, they write back to me and they say, thank you, this is awesome. So Brian, talk a little bit about the environment and what's in there from a usability standpoint for QuickTrack users.
Yeah, again, the environment is a Windows 10 desktop that we preload it with Microsoft Office. It's all the features, Access, Excel, Word, Outlook, all those types of things. However, we also realize that there's other apps that could be needed in your organization, and those all get installed in there as well. So again, this is a default build, but as you're maturing into the environment, we have other things that we put in there that our organizations need, whether it be QuickBooks or for manufacturers, SolidWorks potentially, or any line of business applications that need to be used for your processes. Now, keep in mind, these aren't just applications we install by default. So this is where the real partnership comes in from the technical side, from the security side, is all these applications are certified and vetted to make sure they're secure. In other words, we're not going to install an application that has known severe vulnerabilities that could potentially put your data at risk. So the separation of IT from security works really good here. So the process is that we'll take a look at the application, or I should say the Beryllium security team will evaluate the app. Chances are it's going to be good. We install it. If not, we work together collaboratively to find another solution, whether we get an updated version or we find a more secure product, sometimes even better than what you're using, that's going to help get the job done for what you need to do. So,
and one key thing there,
absolutely,
too, and
yep.
yeah, right, is really you're within a secure environment here. So you're using Excel, you're using Word documents, they're being stored and saved here within the QuickTrack environment. So they're not going up to a Microsoft server, for example, and being stored there, right? But it gives you some capabilities to, do specific project work and keep them in the shared drive or the encrypted drive for everybody within QuickTrack that has access to see. And so it's again, just like a remote desktop to your own organization, it's the same. It just got the security controls around it of NIST 800-171. And you should not be going on to a secure system like QuickTrack and checking your fantasy football scores or checking out Yahoo to see the latest celebrity news, right? That's not CUI work. So we're very, very big, and this comes down to education and end user training, which we do CUI training within this. We do general InfoSec training within this for the rest of the business to keep that stuff away. But that's the kind of stuff that the point here is if you're using CUI and working with CUI, get into QuickTrack. And when you're done, out you go, right? And now you're back to your normal day, you're back to your normal network, and now you've just eliminated all of that risk of having CUI slip out of here, which you can't do. And then it helps keep things away from kind of getting in here that shouldn't be in here and then compromising this system. So it's very locked down, and that's obviously very much on purpose because that's what NIST 800-171 represents. It's a good security program. It really is. When it's done, it is a great way of protecting and accessing and keeping the integrity of information in one place. So I'll show we'll just have this play out here. It will move on to kind of show a couple more of the apps, and then we'll kind of show you again, log out. So now you're done, and off we go, sign out. Thank you for coming, and on to the rest. Okay, so from this standpoint, we've got a few minutes left. I want to make sure that we get to some questions here, but to kind of reiterate everything that we're talking about is, why QuickTrack? And QuickTrack is not for everybody. So it is for small businesses who have typically a smaller scope of users that need access to information, of controlled and classified information, to succeed within the DoD as a contractor. So with that is all of the things you see on the left are just some of the key features within the QuickTrack solution. So what we did here even is highlight and color code the ones that IT and security are managing. So you'll see it obviously starts with the secure system, which is a virtual environment, which you just saw, remote desktop access from anywhere with a stable internet connection. Well, that goes to the next checkbox, is the system security plan becomes much easier when the system is the same for everybody. Okay, and that's another thing. A system security plan is a live living document, but difficult to do sometimes for a small business if you're using your own system and you're making changes here and you're updating here and you're trying to replace here. That becomes a very, very big, risky business decision for somebody when it comes to certification time with an audit, whether it's a DCMA audit or a CMMC certification. You know, that we got to make sure that so we've tightened that up, and that's what the system, the QuickTrack system then represents. So then your plan of action and milestones is another. That's a business and security function document. It's here's where my requirements are. Which ones do I not have in place? When you utilize a system like QuickTrack, we'll just call it roughly 70% of those requirements are technical. Those are taken care of, and now you shift your focus to training, hard copy CUI, stuff that goes outside of technology. And you'll see down at the bottom, incident response planning and having an audit manual and preparing for showing customers or an auditor that comes in to check it out. And policy and procedure alone is a huge component of this. That's where your process maturity comes into play. It's not just do you have something, but do you have a policy for it? And then do you have a procedure in which you are doing it and then testing to make sure that you're doing it and showing that you're doing it. And again, that becomes a lot easier when you know the system is built this way and it's being managed by somebody else. The policy and procedure around the technologies is pretty straightforward. When you start getting into how do we, the business, handle CUI here in our facility or maybe in remote offices, then that's where you work with Beryllium, and we talk about that, and we make sure that those are meeting the letter of the law and passing muster in an audit, but more importantly, that it's being controlled, that you're handling that information with your users that see this information correctly. So, and then you can see the technical aspects here of, you know, your IT support staff, and this is your CUI MSP. In this case, is Point North Networks. They're not there to replace your managed service provider. In fact, we collaborate really well with our customers' current managed service providers, whether they're in-house or outsourced. But you know, having a SIEM, for example, is a heavy lifting object for a lot of small businesses to not just purchase and vet and implement, but also manage. So that's a big deal too, multi-factor and so on. So the biggest thing really is QuickTrack is an affordable, practical, and secure solution. Those are the three key factors that every small business should be making their decisions on when they are improving and making efficient decisions on doing business with the government or doing business with anybody. Okay, so that's the three core pillars of what we're trying to get across with this. And if you have further questions on some of these things and specifics about you, I know we've got some questions coming in here. Please reach out to us, and we'll have that here at the end. So, just to recap everything, CMMC Level 3, that's our focus. That's what QuickTrack represents. That's what we're talking to people about. It is labeled good in the 5 phases and 5 levels of CMMC because they're not asking you to be great here. They're not asking you to go from 0 to hero overnight. You can go to good and be good before you're great with something like QuickTrack. Okay, they aren't asking you to be Fort Knox. They're not asking you to be Raytheon level security. You don't. Small businesses typically aren't facing those threats. They're facing much less tactical threats, and it's embarrassing sometimes because they're working, but it's managed. That's a very big highlighted word, is that we have to make sure we're managing our program and we're not just having it in place and then checking it every year and say, whoops, kind of forgot about that in July. This is about keeping this in place and being a good supplier to the DoD, okay? And that comes through the requirements, which are technology, administrative, and physical controls and requirements. We put technology in orange to emphasize again, that's where Point North Networks resides on this. Administrative and the physical side is where your business and security functions work together to meet those requirements as well. At the end of the day, this is what it comes down to. It's leaving the heavy lifting stuff to us. That's what this is meant to do. Small businesses need to get this off their plate, do business as usual, have their CUI in a place that's easily accessible, easily able to send and receive from, work on your scope, work on your perimeter. This is, again, your devices don't come into scope when you're using a remote desktop, things like that we'd love to have those conversations with you about, because that is the information security 101 mindset of controlling data. It's yours, it's the government's. You don't want even your competition probably getting this information. You're an innovative business. This is what QuickTrack represents. And when we're done with our QuickTrack clients and when they're implemented, we give them a challenge coin, because this is a challenge. This is a securing our nation tactic in reinforcement, and that's what the CMMC is going to do. It is going to make us a much stronger supply chain of the defense industrial base and the DoD, and we like to reward our clients with this because they should be proud. They should feel very, very proud that they are a good supplier of the DoD. All right, so we've got 20 minutes left, give or take. So we are going to field some questions. I've got a couple that have come in here. Let me just pop these open quick. Okay, so chicken and egg type of question. Who certifies CMMC Level 3 first? Will all vendors in Beryllium Collaborative certify first prior to customer certifications? Okay, so this is a good question. The answer doesn't fully exist yet. The CMMC certifications themselves will be conducted by certified third-party auditors. Those have not officially been named. They are still taking applications, and that's through the CMMC accreditation body, the CMMC AB that I mentioned early in this presentation. They will be the only ones, the C3PAO are the only ones that can certify you as a business. Now, when it comes to those of us on the problem solver side of the fence, and Beryllium and Point North and all these collaborators that you see within the QuickTrack solution are not going to be C3PAOs. We want to be on the problem solver side. So they have newly announced ways in which organizations that are helping support compliance and implementation like we do can go through some measures. But yes, those types of things are coming, and QuickTrack, along with those that collaborate, will have the required, what's the word I'm looking for, required verification that it does what it does. But the nice thing about anything that you're doing within NIST 800-171 is that within your system security plan and your plan of action and milestones, it does allow for you to be creative. You can do what you want to your organization, which is kind of what we did with QuickTrack, to pass the audit as long as you meet the requirement and you can show that. So we can go on and on about that. So please, if you got further questions, reach out to us. You've got my email up here. We can talk more about that, but excellent question. Okay, so Brian, this is a good one here. And this comes up a lot because people are scrambling to figure out exactly what they need to do to position themselves to be successful with all this. So how is this different than doing it ourselves? And I'm guessing they mean by using the components that either we're featuring or going out and basically shopping for all of their products and implementing them. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, Derek, that's a great question. So first of all, as I mentioned up front, it took us a long time to develop this and get things right and actually meet a level of compliance. That's the important thing. And the more important thing is that the QuickTrack is not just technology, it's not just policies and procedures, it's an entire program. The whole thing is pre-built, custom-made, designed for you to meet compliance nearly out of the box. So our partner services are great. Virtru for encryption, absolutely you can implement encryption. Absolutely you can plug in Nectar SIEM, and absolutely you can use two-factor authentication. But those are all small pieces of the overall 171 program requirements. So it takes a lot in order to do this in yourself, a lot of expense. We've done all the heavy lifting for you. and made it so I think, Derek, we advertise that you can be compliant in 14 days. And we're actually doing that because it's pre-built, pre-configured, everything you need right there, so we can get you in, we can get you up and running in 14 days versus having to go through all the pain and the expense to try to piece these together from a technology standpoint, not even mentioning the policies and the administrative controls that go along with it. So that's where really the QuickTrack solution is at.
Yeah, and well said. So just to touch on that again too, is it can be done in as quick as 14 days and again, this is the compliance and implementation discussion, right? You can technically have a gap analysis under the current rules and say, I know my gaps, I've got a lot of them, but I'm working on them, make a plan of action milestones and spend the next 10 years making tiny little progress and say, we're good. That life is coming to an end. So in our situation here is that you not only do you drastically improve your implementation by having a secure system like QuickTrack that you're accessing through a remote desktop, then the policy and procedure, and there's a question on this that we'll get to in a second, then focuses pretty easily around your physical copy for your business and around your organization and checking logs as visitors come in, and do you have CUI marked on lock boxes and is that room locked, et cetera. And installing users into a remote, a lot of people did this during COVID, right? It was installing VPNs in remote desktops on devices. When you have a smaller scope, that doesn't take that much time. It takes, an hour with a user, let's say, to get them in, train them how to use it a little bit and kind of get them going. And then you can say you have the system, and then you might have a couple things where you have to, maybe, your cameras in your facility need to be updated, or you need a better logbook or something. But, for now, you can work on those, and then you just need to be in position to have those done by the time you're awarded, say, a CMMC Level 3 a piece of business. And then when those certifications come out, you can go find your C3PAO. A lot of your heavy lifting is going to be done here. There are things, again, as a business that you're going to have to do, and we consult on that. We help you with that. We do monthly calls with our QuickTrack clients too. I know we didn't talk a ton about what it looks like moving forward. That's also important because now we're talking about being on top of anything that comes up. Maybe your contract changes. Maybe you add a contract. Maybe you add or subtract people from your organization. Maybe your scope changes. If you just call us out of the blue and say, hey, we just hired 5 people and we need to see where the CUI flows within them, and you're not using something like QuickTrack, that becomes very, very, very difficult. With QuickTrack, it's a very scalable solution, right? It's get another user into the system. Let's figure out who they're communicating with, et cetera. So good question. And yes, it's a heavy lifting thing. It's essentially kind of out of the box system that you can use and then mature your way on the rest of the non-technical stuff. So same question came up here about recommended for necessary policy and procedures outside of QuickTrack. We have templates that we provide. If people want to then go fill them out based on their business, we consult on that as well. Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's go through it. We do that when we come on site. We're doing a lot of that remote due to COVID, but we do annual on-site engagements with our QuickTrack clients every year just to reattest and knock off any sort of open gaps that may have happened because of changes to the organization, et cetera. So let's see, we got a couple more minutes here. We did a policy procedure question came up, so that was good. How easy is it to use and install? So we kind of just talked about this, but use and install into my organization, and how does this affect us day to day? I'll jump on that first, Brian, and then I'll let you kind of talk maybe just for a couple seconds on implementation. But from a day-to-day standpoint, that's a very good term to use. Business as usual is obviously very important. For a small business who's got many, many hats on individual people and lots of innovation on what they're doing to support their contracts, the day-to-day doesn't change much. Your day-to-day changes a little bit when you have to make sure that you log into another system to access and send and receive CUI, for example, than it would just to kind of be free living and doing things around. Now, with information security in general, as time improves and technology improves, day-to-day stuff is going to become more and more efficient. It just is, it has to. But with that, we can't forget about data and information and your secret sauce or whatever you're trying to protect, control unclassified information as an example. So from a day-to-day aspect, it's not much different. You log in, when you're done, you log out. If you need to spend all day, every day in QuickTrack, great. You've got the resources to communicate, store, send, receive, et cetera. So from that standpoint, Brian, I know when it comes to, installing and getting onboarded with some of our clients, those questions come up. Anything to add to that from your end?
Yeah, we're not just, here's your Windows 10 desktop and we'll see you later. We essentially become your IT department when it comes to the hosted environment. And that's really from day one. We're working with you from the beginning. Let's figure out who your users are. How are they going to access the system? Where are they going to access it from? What applications do you need? Then we schedule time with each one of your users to get them into the system, make sure they're comfortable with it, making sure they're working with it correctly, and then ongoing support. Any questions related to the environment itself. I'm not sure on how I send email, or is this really encrypted? Those types of things. We have a full IT support staff here ready to support and make sure your experience with QuickTrack is as good as it possibly can be, working with CUI data.
Yeah, that's well said. Okay, a couple more minutes and then we'll wrap up and have everybody go on with their day. Let's see, what's another one here? So we get this question a lot too. How is QuickTrack more helpful than, and this is quoted, so compliance tools out there? I think this goes back, and I'm assuming here on the question around the difference between implementation and compliance. So there are a lot of tools available in the market today that will provide you some guidance and some help around the controls of frameworks. For example, NIST 800-171 in this case, where you can download their documentation or you can download their tool that helps maybe manage your implementation and assign tasks to people and really deviate those projects to your team so that you can make sure it gets done and then update your status. And those are compliance tools. Most of the time, they're not doing the actual work. And that's the difference between QuickTrack and a tool that tells you how compliant you are. And that's hard to stress, and it's a difficult conversation sometimes, but that's what we represent, because we're talking implementation with QuickTrack. We're not talking just a score or just a gap percentage on where you're at so that you can say that you're pretty close and you're doing okay. This is about getting it done. This is about getting it done so the bad guys stay away. So from that standpoint, there's a lot of tools out there. We always just say a little bit of caution on that. If you have systems in place and you have resources internally, we have a lot of clients like that they are very gifted and very blessed to have people internally. They've got budgets, they've got great plans of action and milestones, and then they kind of hit that portion where they need to get pushed over the hump. That's awesome. Those compliance tools in that standpoint to maybe take you from 80, 85, 90% up to 100% are great. There's no question there. That's not where QuickTrack really comes into play. That's where more of a traditional route with Beryllium, and then we go to our partners like Point North Networks and Virtrus and Duos, and if those are things that you're missing and we know that they meet the requirement that you're missing, then we can make that connection and you can get that stuff into place and then reattest to that and say, okay, I had these gaps and now we're done and we are moving forward and we're going to keep them in place at all times. That's typically not what a small business is up against. They're not quite as blessed most of the time, and that's a great question. And there are a lot of tools out there, and it is quite noisy. One more question here around, we've talked about how QuickTrack is a private built custom system and it's not a cloud. So that's another key factor here is that system is no different in the data center that it's in, that's utilized by 3-letter agencies and Netflix, Google, and Amazon, and very, very protected. It'd be no different if we picked that up and put it in your facility. So it's not cloud computing in your facility either. So that's really important. there is a physical security question here. It's a great topic. There's not a ton of physical security requirements to get done, but manufacturers and engineers, and as we adjust to post-COVID life, it's still important to know what's available, what you need to do, what you don't need to do, but there's really, really good policy and procedure and access control best practice to utilize the right ways for your organization. And that's all specific. So we can't just give you boilerplate opinions on that because your situation is going to be different than the business down the street. So physical security doesn't have to be super daunting. It really is just managing people in and out of your facility and keeping CUI in places where people need to really, really, really try hard to get into. And you put those layers of security in place just like you would in a system to not make it easy for them to access. So good question. And again, that's another one of those conversations that we can have afterwards. You've got our emails up there and we'd love to talk to you more about that. We've got a couple minutes left. I think that's going to be a good stopping point. Brian, unless you have any other questions that came your way or anything else to address, do you have anything on your end before we call it a day?
Hey, Derek, I just want to say great job on presenting this information in a clear, concise manner. There's a lot of questions, and I think you did a great job with this series. So I just want to say thank you to you and your team.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And the same goes for everybody involved. I know it might have been a little bit of webinar overkill for some people, but it's a very important topic. And this is a solution that is just not that simple just to send you a one-page slick to a lot of people that ask questions about it. This is the vetting that people need to do. So yeah, so thank you, Brian, for being a part of this. Thank you for everybody that joined all of the webinars in the past and have gone through this with us and saw this portion come to a close. We will have some upcoming webinars that will be QuickTrack focused, and then some that will also kind of come into more key specifics on what to look out for and be aware of as you maybe go your own route, or some other areas and where CMMC and NIST Standard 171 are really doing some cool things. For example, NIST Standard 171 revision 2 was just kind of finalized and put together recently. So stay tuned for that. If you follow us on social media or go to our website and sign up to talk to us, please do that, and we'll make sure that you get the information that you need. So thank you again, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Brian. Very good information as always. And we look forward to hearing from everybody. Stay safe and stay healthy. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.